Have you ever wondered how to get rid of your ego? I kind of have to giggle when I say it because I have tried that many years ago. Not for a long time, but I do remember there was a time where, when you're on the spiritual path and the only thing that gets in the way is your ego and you want to get rid of it so you can be spiritual. And what most of us do for a while, of course, is instead of getting rid of it, we actually suppress it, pretend it's not there, cover the anger or the guilt or the selfishness with, a spiritual facade. We've all done it. And again, it's part of the journey. And then when you look back after a while, it's kind of funny. But you may also have noticed that getting rid of the ego is not possible for many reasons. One is, I have to ask myself, who is it that wants to get rid of my ego? And of course, it's the ego itself. It's when we're still identified with a separate sense of self. That means separated from God, separated from our true being. I am. I am not my ego. And when I rest in and as I am, there's nothing to get rid of because it's just so pleasant to be what I am, who I am, that the thought to get rid of doesn't really exist in here, at least in my experience. But when I move out from I am, my center, my core, my soul, then I move into duality where there seems to be a battle. And there seems to be this thing called the ego that is not loving, that is not spiritual, that is doing the opposite of what I really want. So as I move away from here, then the battle starts, and then I want to get rid of that ego. And as you can see, it's moving out of the reality of who I am into another reality, but it's not a real reality. It's all happening in my mind. And what is happening out here is only happening in my mind. So the more I go out there to change things, to get rid of things, to get rid of my ego, I'm feeding the exact thing that I want to get rid of. So it just does not work to try to get rid of your ego in the way that many of us have tried it in the past. What I learned was that since I am love, and that was the big realization that I had many years ago when I had a huge spiritual awakening, and basically experienced myself as love, even though I didn't know it was myself, my true self. I just experienced everything as love, and there was no battle. There was not trying to get rid of anything. But when that experience subsided, which I have talked about in the past, I was basically left with my ego and all the things that come with that. And it took me a long, long time to dissolve it. It's more a dissolving and seeing through. But what has been important about it is that the love that I realized that I am that love is the only way to change anything, because everything really is love. When I do not love something, such as my ego, then I move straight into duality. And I'm lost. It's not going to get better. We might build up a facade and pretending and get a new personality, but it's all happening out in the dualistic experience of the illusion, which is only happening in the mind and experienced through the five senses. That's why it's also called the five sense mind. That's where it's all happening. And the way that I learned to change that at that stage in my life was to extend love to every single part of me. And that was not easy. I ended up calling myself a self-love mentor, and I can still play around with that title, playing that role, because I think it's a very important role for all of us to learn to love ourselves at the level of oneness, at the level of understanding that if we do not love or include or allow every single part of who we think we are, it's staying outside as if it's a separate sense of self, separate from the divine, and it is lost forever. But instead of trying to get rid of it, when I include it, allow it, love it, whatever that looks like, then it's like the love or the self-love feels like a bridge that I built from the love that I am already. I extend that to this part out here that I have not loved and instead wanted to get rid of. Now I extend that love that I am to this part, and I kind of just hold it and allow it. And what happens then is that this part that has felt unloved, maybe its whole life, can start melting. There are often a lot of emotions that happen there because the contraction of not being loved is very painful. So when we do extend the love, this can start softening. And when it softens, that sense of duality, of not being wanted to be gotten rid of, that dissolves, because love does that. Love does dissolve duality when we know how to include it all. It doesn't mean that you have to love the way you have been acting that you didn't like. You don't have to love it, because that could be another thing of the ego, trying to love what you don't love, all happening in here. But it's just like, it's kind of a sweet extension of allowing. And then this part can soften, and it just melts into the ocean of love. It's not there then. You see that? It just drops into the ocean of oneness. And then you don't need to battle with it anymore. If it comes back, which it usually does, you now know you bring this, and you do that until the charge is out of it. Until, for me, it's been until I'm so tired of battling with these dualistic thoughts and beliefs and painful memories. Once they have softened enough to just come back home, it's not interesting anymore. It's just not interesting. It's much more interesting and enjoyable to stay here. So please don't try and get rid of your ego. Try and allow it to be whatever it is, and just listen to it. Just listen to what is what it needs, why it feels so contracted, why it is that it's behaving the way it does. Because love just loves. When we're not being loved, we do things that are not always so wise, and we can get in trouble for it. So the question, how do you get rid of your ego? You don't, you can't. But you can allow it to come back through your love for the love that you are. Let it just be included and bring it back home. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.